Ian Cameron, who's the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Police. Ian, good morning to you, and thank you as always for being available and for your time. There are a range of things we want to get through this morning, but I think let's bring in that story as a hook that Pila's talking about, that family in KwaZulu-Natal, an example of the concern that you raised about how police are balancing force and enforcing the law. We know it's a delicate and deadly dance, and there are two issues I want to raise with you. But the first one would be, are our police well enough trained to manage enforcement under fire?
Thank you very much. So I think in terms of training, there are a large majority of police officers that are very well trained in order to handle those kinds of situations. There are others that have been investigated in the past that seemed not to be adequately trained or chose not to do the right thing when in such a situation. But in the majority of cases, especially with regards to shooting incidents, we have seen that in most of these incidents, the police reacted to an imminent threat to their lives or to the lives of someone else.
So we go back to the story in KwaZulu-Natal, and there are some things that don't seem to line up in terms of how police could have executed their arrests, and also whether these were indeed men who were guilty, or at least stacked up against the allegations that police had made against them in terms of their investigations. I mean, how would you counsel a family like that who are saying, yes, we understand what the police is saying, but we don't believe that what they're saying is true, and in fact there's a lot that doesn't make sense here?
So first of all, I wouldn't actually counsel them in the beginning. It's important for investigation to be conducted properly. I'm concerned about the stories, over the past 2 to 3 weeks in KZN. It seems like there's this sudden undercurrent of trying to discredit police action. I don't hear what I'm not saying. If there is ill intent in any form of incident, it must be investigated. But I'm concerned that now suddenly, out of one video, that we don't know whether there's any form of manipulation. We don't know the credibility of that video. I heard what the presenter or the person on the ground said just now about, the radio presenter. But fact of the matter is, we need to tell the other side of the story as well. So it's critical for us to say that if it is true that they intercepted them, potentially because they were about to commit another crime, we don't know whether they were committing crimes at all. It's important for us to have an objective investigation to get to the bottom of it. It's also important that, and I must say this, that very often family members of alleged criminals do say, but they had no involvement in crime. And therefore, it's critical for us to have an objective view on it towards the police and so to the alleged criminals.
Yeah. I think it's important, going back to what you said, Ian, about this sudden undercurrent to discredit police. We know not just in, let's talk about KwaZulu-Natal, where the Provincial Police Commissioner has said, listen, we're trying to do our job. The situation is really difficult. We're dealing with suspects who are not scared to use their weapons on our members. And we know, again, going back to my first question, that it is that delicate dance. But besides this particular story, what else are you concerned about, Ian, when it comes to, as you say, the seeming trend in discrediting police, and what impact does that actually have on policing?
Sure. So yeah, thank you. I think it's critical to discuss because it seems that 2-3 weeks ago we heard about the so-called investigation into the provincial commissioner by IPID. First, it was said that it was instructed by the minister, and then suddenly it came in as an anonymous source. And this morning I read a report where it said that people inside of IPID are saying that they've been told to hold back and not investigate anything, and that they don't have anything to investigate. So it's becoming difficult to determine what to believe. And this leads me to the point where I call it this strange because it seems that there's a specific agenda being driven. The problem with this is it creates further mistrust or distrust amongst senior members of the police. It creates further mistrust from the public in the police. And that's something we certainly don't need right now. That being said, though, if IPID does have any form of investigation, then they shouldn't have communicated prematurely on that. They need to make sure that their ducks are in a row, that their house is in order for making irresponsible statements that is detrimental to the investigation. Because now, already, and you can see it on social media, it's being labeled as a witch hunt. And if it is a legitimate investigation, they should have been prepared for that type of let's call it, counter communication to what they are saying. But it's clear to me that it wasn't well thought through. So yes, it creates a very, let's call it, distasteful or uncomfortable situation. And it is going to obviously land on the portfolio committee's table too. And it is something we certainly will delve deeper into. And then lastly, just in terms of the shooting incidents, it's critical for us to understand, and we can see this during our trip through the Eastern Cape and also KZN. Extortion, amongst other things, is significant. The criminals involved in these provinces are extremely heavily armed with high caliber firearms. It's important to understand the dangerous people that we are working with. These aren't people that come and have tea with you and then invite you to share some money with them just in case, you don't have protection the next day.
Oh, sorry, I thought our signal froze there. All right, as you've shared with our viewers, you are in the Eastern Cape. We know this is where extortion rackets are rife. Our reporters have been reporting for weeks now on extortion ranging from, just an innocent woman hawker who might be sitting at the corner of a street being extorted for 20 Rand, all the way to doctors and construction companies. And you've just shared with us now that what you're dealing with are people who are ruthless, who are determined, who are organized, and more importantly, heavily armed. As you dig deeper into the profile and the anatomy of these extortion rings in the Eastern Cape, what then are some of the ideas on the table to begin to unravel this network?
Yes, I think that the two or three significant highlights that have come out. One, there's a massive fear amongst community members to speak. The limited amount of participation from communities is extremely alarming. I don't blame them either, but we've literally had to change the program because of community members being too scared to engage. Many of them have contacted us anonymously over phones, emails, etc., because of the fear to speak. And something that was highlighted in East London today was the way in which the South African Police Service is in full attendance, but hardly anyone from the community. And this creates a picture of mistrust. In East London specifically, it was very positive to see the inroads that police have made regarding policeable crimes. And that, I think, is one of the reasons for the significant shift towards kidnapping for ransom, which is obviously extortion-related crime. The other two things that came out was one, the taxi industry that operates like a total and utter mafia, and I think are a significant threat, not only to provincial security, but I would go as far as saying to national security. And then a huge problem with rogue security companies in cahoots now with the taxi industry. The whole entire local economy is ransom. What needs to be done? I think there needs to be a significant zoom in on specific kingpins. There needs to be dedicated prosecutors and fast-tracked capacity for an integrated approach to make sure that these kingpins are not only investigated but convicted quickly in order for us to unravel the so-called mafia structures that they have developed.
Well, out of that, one of the things that you have said, quite strongly or expressed are your concerns about police collusion in some of these matters, police corruption. I think one of the questions you've asked is, in terms of internal cleanup at SAPS, is SAPS clean enough at the top to be able to drive such a cleanup? You also raised questions around and concerns around SAPS's own anti-corruption measures. How is that element complicating this focused, targeted and highly dangerous work you say needs to be undertaken, for example, in places like the Eastern Cape?
Yeah, no, it makes it very difficult because you need to constantly figure out who you can and can't trust, and so everything happens in blurts of communication. You're never sure if you can fully trust the individual that you're working with. Look, I heard the comment by Dr. Guy Lamb yesterday saying that it's speculation of state involvement, and I think he couldn't be more wrong. There's no way that organized crime, specifically extortion, can flourish the way that it does without state involvement, government official involvement. It's physically impossible. In fact, organized crime, part of the definition is involvement usually of state officials. In terms of this, I am of belief that if we don't do the relevant external lifestyle audits as a start and the relevant skills audits of senior members in the South African Police Service to clean up that structure, we can't expect change on ground level. And I'm not convinced that the current internal audit process is sufficient, because I hear that internal audits are done to indicate red flags for lifestyle challenges in terms of living above the relevant pay grade. But I many officers and members that certainly do live way beyond that standard, especially considering the low ranks of some of them, and then senior too. So I am of opinion that it certainly is not, it's not being addressed properly. We need some kind of an external influence. It has become a resolution of Parliament, specifically the skills audit, and part of that is to determine competence in terms of matters too.
Well, in closing, you are arguing for an independent body that monitors police conduct more effectively. What do you have in mind? Because we know IPID is managing and investigating complaints against police, so the suggestion might be, could their mandate be extended? But what do you specifically have in mind?
So there's more than one, certainly not a new body. I think there are way too many bodies wasting a lot of tax money. I think I stay out of politics, because it seems to me, or it feels to me, that recently it seems that there's a bit of a political taste to some of the statements. But IPID needs to be properly resourced. The proposal in terms of budget that I saw, and if it is passed, does show that there's a significant increase in resources for them, so that's great. But I think as we've asked the Auditor General with regards to the DNA backlog to zoom in on forensics of the South African Police Service, I think that's one of the routes to follow. And if we need to get external entities to advise it, then we should do that too, especially with regards to lifestyle audits. We need to make sure that whoever is involved in that process is completely beyond reproach and has no tie to any of the senior individuals in the relevant institutions.
All right. Ian Cameron, thank you very much for talking to us this morning. I know that you're busy there in the Eastern Cape, a lot of important work done. And as you say, it's probably music to the ears of those who have been at the receiving end of these extortion rings. Perhaps just quickly in closing, I mean, for those who have been approaching you quietly, is there another resource once you and your team have left for them to say, or for a hotline for them to call to say, this is happening, where we are?
Yes, they spoke to us about the actual hotline. I don't have the number with me right now. They can just Google it. Sorry, but the point is they can use the hotline. In terms of the committee itself, if there are significant challenges, people are more than welcome to send an email that's also available on Parliament's website, and then we can make contact and follow up. But we also have encouraged people to follow the relevant channels. There's no use in just complaining because one detective didn't follow up on a matter. It's important to exhaust all remedies from the station commander, district commander, even provincial commissioner before you go further. And it's important to be part of organized community structures like community policing forums, that you're not isolated and alone in tackling the issue.
All right, Ian Cameron, thank you for your time this morning. The chairperson there of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee.